thank you very much for coming on such a cold day. Yeah, you're very tough Koreans to come out here, right? Okay, so today, as she says, we're going to have 3 lectures. So it's 3 hours, but don't worry. After the first hour, we'll have some time to stretch, and you can have some coffee, go pee, things like that. And if you have to leave in the middle, don't worry. You don't want to get a drink or have to go to the washroom. That's okay. Just jump up, go out, come back. It's okay. Okay. It's not elementary school. You're adults, all right? So that's okay. Also the last session, the last hour, in fact, we're talking about games, so we're going to play some games, right? So it'll be a little more active, not just listening so much, okay? So what I'd like to do to begin with is to talk about the communicative approach. Now, most of you probably use the communicative approach, and probably all of you know something about it. Even if you know some things about it, maybe I can add to that, add some other information. So as I'm talking, please think about what you already know. What do you already know about the communicative approach? What do you already know about other approaches that are used in language teaching and learning? And see if I'm saying something new or different or opposite to what you know. So you can think about that. If you have questions, I'll answer all the questions at the end. And also, big bonus, at the end of the sheets, at the back of the sheet, the last line is the most important one. It's my email address, right? Yeah. If you have any questions, you wake up tonight, 3 in the morning, you think, I should have asked him this, one chance. No, don't worry. You can always email me later. So please, any questions you have, that's great because we can share it with everyone. And if you have a question, probably 10 people are thinking the same question, but they're too shy, right? Yeah. So don't be so shy, okay? All right, so let's start off with the communicative approach, see if all the technology works. All right. Okay, good. Okay, so really our question about the approach is, what is the best way to teach English? I mean, that's a question that teachers ask themselves always. And we've been asking ourselves this question really for, 1,000 years. So there's 3 main approaches to learning, teaching and learning. Am I in the way? Can you see? Yeah, maybe I should stand somewhere else. Should I stand over here? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. All right. Okay. So the first view is the structural approach. And in the structural approach, we used to believe that language was like a machine, right? You have inputs and you have outputs. It's like a little factory language. And so grammar was the main machinery within that factory. Basically, it was running things. It was a rule-based system. Now, grammar is fantastic. I love grammar. It's exciting. But you don't. She doesn't, yeah. Many people don't. And why don't they like grammar? They don't like grammar because it doesn't always fit. In fact, when most of the research was done on grammar in the 15, 16, 17, 1800s, they were really talking about Latin. Now, Latin, the language of the Romans, is a very grammar-driven language. It has stern rules, firm, precise rules, and most of the language follows it. The trouble with English is a mess. It's a mess of a language. English has words from Latin, from Greek, from French, from German. It's really, actually, English is about 75% French. So it's very confusing because each of those languages have their own grammar. So when you really start to examine grammar in English, it can become very confusing very quickly. There's always exceptions. So we're quite concerned about this type of an approach. After many years, people thought about that and they started to decide a structural approach doesn't always work, doesn't really work very well. So they started to think about something, a functional approach. A functional, what does this mean? It means that language is really to conduct a number of functions. For example, shopping. So language is something that allows you to do something that you want to do, to express yourself, to get what you want, or to do what you want, to find out information, to tell information. So that was sort of the whole view for a certain amount of time. But people then started to think, maybe it's too limiting. It's too limiting. Actually, it doesn't really describe all the situations. So we come into the most current way of thinking. And now we talk about an interactive view or an interactive approach to language teaching and learning. And in this view, we look at language differently. It's for the creation and maintenance of social relationships, right? So this is really a little bit different, because I can go into a store, and I say, hey, give me that, right? I want that, give it to me, right? And language-wise, that's functional, right? That's functional because I want something, give it to me, you know, and maybe you're going to, oh, okay, here you are, right? Give it to me. But that's not maintaining the social relationships that we're trying to build through language. In fact, when I go into a store, I say, oh, excuse me, could you please give me one of those? Oh, yes, sir, of course. What am I doing? I'm actually setting up a social relationship that's going to benefit both of us. In that social relationship, it's easier for me to get a little discount or a better deal if I'm more polite and if I'm doing that. And when we're communicating every day, in every occasion, we're always using these social relationships language. So if my wife says, oh, I'm hungry. I say, oh, so am I. Are you going to make dinner, dear? Right? Yeah. And she says, no, dear. I thought maybe you would make dinner, right? Yeah. So in fact, we're doing this relationships, and you're trying to get what you want. And this is the big important thing, because a lot of language is, in a functional sense, about getting what you want, but we're doing it in subtle and different and interesting ways. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through the different methods. But keep those three in mind. They're on your worksheet. Keep them, or on your handout, but keep them in mind as we look at a couple of different approaches that have been dominant over the past centuries. In ancient history, okay, so this is really background, far, far, far ago background, because it helps us to understand what is going on now. So a little history lesson, sort of, to begin with. Before 1857, how did people learn languages? Say, well, people used to learn languages thousands of years ago. I mean, how did they learn a language? Well, there's two things we're talking about. First of all, we talk about the way in which a person learns a first language. And then we talk about the way a person learns a second language. And for really thousands of years, there was no difference. If you really wanted to learn a second language, you would go live with a person who spoke that language. You would spend a lot of time, you'd listen, and you'd somehow figure it out. In fact, that's what humans are really, really good at. We're good at creating rules. We can create rules, and that we do that all the time. We look at patterns in language, and we sort of say, I understand that. Okay, I see what they're saying. And you start to figure out how the rules work. And that's important. So really, before the 1850s, more or less, or the 1650s, more or less what people did is just hang out with somebody else who knew that language, and you would learn it. Now, what about immersion? Well, what about this approach? Why don't we still do this? Well, in fact, we do. It's very much an immersion approach. And if you go to come to Canada to visit me at my home, you'll be forced, in many cases, to learn English. You'll be in an immersion situation. People will say, hey, get out of the way. Excuse me, what do you want? What are you doing there? Move over. You know, and you sort of start paying attention and learning some of the language, right? You will interact with people, and you will want things. You think, oh, I'm going to a store. Excuse me, can I have, I don't know the word. You'll figure out some way to do it. An immersion situation will work. However, the problem is this. It's not efficient, right? It's not the most efficient way to learn. So as teachers, that's what we're concerned about. Not just one way to learn, but the most efficient way to learn. So, okay. But 1657, things started to change a little bit, and people were really just starting to think about how language should be taught. And there's this guy named John Comenius. And John Comenius was Czechoslovakian, or he lived in the area that's now Czechoslovakia. And he created the first illustrated textbook. And basically what he did, very simple idea, but new at that time, he created pictures, and with those pictures went words, and then he translated words into common languages. So it was a new way. People went, wow, what a great idea. And in fact, for 200 years, these books were used throughout Europe. It's incredible how popular they were. They were translated even when the Americans first settled in America, they took their own versions for learning English. And it seemed to be a good way. It's hard to see, but they'd have a little picture of something going on, and then they would explain things that were in the picture. Okay, so not bad, interesting, a good way, and the first textbook, but not perfect. Teaching and learning continued in different ways, and we had what was called the grammar translation method. How many people know grammar translation? Yeah? Okay. How many people don't know grammar translation? Yeah? Okay. How many people don't have any arms? Oh, most of you. Okay, good. Okay, just want to find out. All right. Okay, so grammar, is everybody afraid, right? Teachers afraid. Oh, what if I say the wrong answer, right? Yeah, don't worry. I'm not going to ask you. Okay, so, grammar translation really was a very, very big and important way of learning for a very long time. And it was based on Latin again, and it was the first approach that we talked about, this sort of grammar-based, mechanical way of looking at language. And it was great. Well, actually not so great, but it was good for reading and nothing else. You know, you'd read something, you translate it into English, you'd read something else, translate it into English. You would check to see someone else who had translated it into English, see if it was the same. And that was basically the way that it went. But really, for people who traveled, no. But you have to think, in the 1800s, before the 1800s, few people did travel, right? Most people lived, married, gave birth to children, and died within 10 miles of their house in Old England, right? Some English people still do. All right. Sorry. I hope no English people here. Yeah. But in the old style, it was actually quite practical because people weren't learning a language to speak to other people. They were really just trying to learn a language in order to read, not Shakespeare, but Latin writers or Greek writers or French novels or something like that. So in fact, it was practical for the situation, but this is what we really, really need to understand, is the situation for language teaching and learning is always changing. It's always changing. So we need to think, okay, for our students, not 10 years ago, not when you were in school, not when I was in school, but now, what are students using language for? And it's always changing. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody twittered, right? 20 years ago, nobody was using the internet. It's all new, right? Nobody was searching on the web. But how many of your students are doing that and doing more, Facebook pages, blogging, everything else, every day? Right? It's a different language that they're learning. And if we don't teach them the language that they need to do those kinds of tasks, we're not doing our job. So we need to think about that. Also, the types of jobs that people have. Interesting study done. My professor was my PhD advisor, David Noonan, famous, big, wealthy sort of textbook writer. But he did a study a couple of years ago of workplace English. People studying English in the workplace, like in companies and jobs. Very, very interesting. He looked at companies all over the world doing this, and he found that, in general, someone who spoke English within a country, and this is the same in Germany, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in South America, they're generally getting at least 20% more in pay than somebody who only spoke one language, spoke the local language, because it's necessary for international business. Again, it was not this way 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but that's what your students are training for now. So the grammar translation method, just being able to read a document and translate it, it's not appropriate. So things have changed, and they started changing a lot with technology. Technology was wonderful for language teaching and learning. And one of the big innovations, or the earliest innovations, was the language lab, right? The language lab. It's interesting now, language lab's almost dead. Why? Because you can do almost everything in a language lab on a laptop now. I taught at one university in China. We had 3 Tannenberg language labs. Cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But now, really a laptop with a CD-ROM can do much of the same work. But in the 1940s, the American Army started this audio-lingual method. They were using, teachers to do this, but they thought, okay, they want to teach soldiers to learn new languages, And they want to teach them to learn it quickly. They needed to train spies, right? Spies to, and they also needed to train people who were working in different countries. But they used this audiolingual method. I went through this when I was in first starting university. Boring, 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 you know. Listen, talk, listen, talk, listen, talk, you know. So the cat is on the road, 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 the cat is not on the road, the cat is not on the road. Boring, boring, boring stuff. Again, it wasn't really effective. It could teach people, and this is interesting that came from the army, because it was perfect if you wanted to give orders. It was perfect if you were the only one talking, right? If you're saying, do this, do that, you know, move over there, or something like that. But in terms of communicating with someone else, it really wasn't very appropriate. So it didn't work. It didn't work. So they had to look for some other methods. So another method, and I'm just going through a few. In fact, there are hundreds of methods. If you're really interested in this, try looking it up and seeing how many different methods there are and the different approaches. I'm just going through a few to give you an idea how some of the ideas changed. But in the 1960s, we introduced this idea of situational language teaching. Okay, this was a focus on role play. So this is where, and again, we still see a lot of this in the textbooks and older materials, right? Say, okay, pretend you're in a restaurant. Okay, you're the waiter. I'll be the thing, and you'll be the chef, and you know we'll do this, and you'll do that, and everybody practices the language in this situation. It was an improvement. It was an improvement over the audiolingual method because there was often more variation in what you would say. So it wasn't just like, say, you know, I will have a cat, please, you know, or I will have, I will have a hamburger, please. You could say, I will have a hamburger and French fries, right? So you could change it in a role play situation. And the other person could say, I'm sorry, we don't have any hamburgers, right? You know? And you could have this relationship where you're really being a little more flexible with the language. So that was good as well. Here's another one. Again, it's not an improvement on any of the ones. It's just different. But it was total physical response. Has anybody done these? Yeah? Right? Anybody not done these? Yeah? Shake your head. Yeah. Okay. All right. Total physical response. Okay. It's a wonderful method, but exhausting, right? What do? You say, sit up. Everybody sit up. Everybody sit down. Stand up. Sit down. Stand up. Look at the window. Look out. Look at the window. Look at the door. Look at the door. Look at the door. You know, things like this. And it's going back and forth with these repetitive motions that try to attach physical actions to verbal exchanges. So you're listening, and then you're saying, then you go into say this, say that, you know, answer this question, do that. I don't know. I think, you know, it's entertaining for small children, and for adults it's exhausting. I've taken classes in this myself in Japanese, and I was just, afterwards, you know, it's too much. And there's a limited number of concepts and ideas that you can deal with, you know, with total physical response. But in terms of, but it did some things right. One of the things that it does right, any kind of a game or a song or a physical activity, often makes you forget yourself. And that's good, right? You forget yourself because most of us are very conscious about learning a language. We'll talk about this more later about how different children, middle-aged students, and adults are in learning. But it's often very, very different, the ways in which we learn. So we need to concentrate on that and find opportunities to make people forget themselves. Anything like games, which we'll talk about later this morning, anything like songs, you know, singing songs, because you have to keep up, and it's like karaoke, right? You know, you get a little drunk, you know, you sing, and you lose yourself because you have to keep up to the time, to the pace, and everyone's around you, and it's kind of fun. So this is a good aspect of it, but other aspects maybe not so much. All right. Okay, so total physical response, and then we move into really what has been the dominant method since the 1980s, and that's the communicative approach. So the communicative approach has several functions, and what I'd like to do now is basically talk about each of these and explain what each of them means, and then show you some of the books, the Starship English books, and how this sort of approach is used. Now, I know that not all of you are using Starship English, but you will be. But what I'd really like to do is make you think and reflect on any materials that you're using. I'm going to use this as an example because I know it and I understand it. I can explain it. But as I'm talking, if you're using another book, think to yourself, oh yes, does my book do this? Oh, I don't know. So consider that. And if you can't change your book, that's fine, but consider ways in which you can change your teaching to compensate in some way, to make it better. Okay, in the communicative method, really, we're looking at these 6 points here. Purposefulness. We realize that there has to be a purpose to a language event. So when I'm talking, I can't just, go out and go blah, 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 blah. That's talking for no reason. And a lot of language teaching and learning often has situations in which, students would never find themselves, right? It's ridiculous. I was looking at a primary book the other day. It's written for children that are 5, 6, 7 years old, and it has them, now you go to the airport and buy a ticket to get on the airplane and show them your passport. And there's no bloody way I'm going to let my kid buy a ticket for an airplane when he's 9 years old or something like that. Why would anybody do that, right? Why is that? There's not a true purpose. It's not a true purpose that a student at that age would use, right? They're really not going to talk about certain subjects. So we need to consider, is it an appropriate purpose for language communication? There's lots of things that people practice all the time, that really aren't used in everyday communication or ever used in communication. And of course, what we really need to focus on are those items which are used most frequently. Now, somebody told me recently that we use about 1,000 words, 1,000 to 1,500 words, like 80% of the time. So it's like those words we should use, those types of expressions, those common expressions we should use. And we should have some flexibility so that we can learn more. But we need to start with this idea of having a purpose for each communication event, both in what we're teaching students and what's in the material books. Reciprocity. What's reciprocity mean? Reciprocity refers to there has to be an exchange of information. This is a little different. I'm giving a talk, a lecture, right? And I could be doing this on video or something, and I don't have to let you talk at all, right? So it's one-sided. But this is unusual. In most communicative activities, almost every communicative activity, what we're really doing is we have two people talking or a group of people talking. So the idea of reciprocity is we're always looking for opportunities, not where I just, come in and say, I am handsome, right? I am fine. You're always thinking, well, where would you use that in a conversation? You need to be talking to another person. So check. Okay, so we've got two things, purposefulness, reciprocity. The third one is negotiation. And by negotiation, we actually don't mean the traditional sense of how much is that? $10? Oh, I'll give you $2. $5. No, we're not talking about that kind of negotiation. When we talk about negotiation in language, what we're often talking about is repair, which again, it's confusing, but it doesn't mean fixing things in a sense of, fixing something that's broken, other than language. Let me give you an example. I say, I want to go to the train station. Oh, sorry. Do you mean the train station or the subway? Oh, yeah, a subway. Is that what you call it, a subway? Yeah, right. So what am I doing there? We're in the negotiation. I'm repairing what I've said. Or if I say something like, we need to go to the subway now. We're not both going, are we? Oh, yes, I mean, I need to go to the subway now, right? So we're changing. And we do this all the time in language. We do this and we do clarification. Do you mean this or do you mean that, right? So we're always looking at things where in a language, in a conversation, you're always trying to clarify what the person means exactly, right? I'm going, can you come over to my house later? Your house? I thought you lived in an apartment. Oh yeah, I mean an apartment. Come over to my apartment later, right? You live in an apartment? Okay. All right, so that negotiation is important, is that we're always, talking to people and we're able to adjust. Now, in traditional audiolingual method that we talked about earlier, no negotiation. It was like, how are you, right? The person says, oh, I don't know, I've got a sore back. You're supposed to say I'm fine, right? That's the answer, right? How are you? I'm fine. It goes together. All right, that's the audiolingual method. But that's not real. That's not real. And we're needing to, in the communicative thing has this idea of actually unpredictability, which is coming up. That's really where I should talk about that. Synchronicity means you're talking at the same time. Of course you can write, but writing is not really a communicative activity most of the time because it's not in real time. I can write something, it can sit there for a long time, and then I can send it off, but until the person reads it and responds, it's not really synchronous. So chat, online chat, is a synchronous communicative activity. But just writing a letter, sending it off to grandma, waiting for 3 weeks, comes back with a thank you note, it's not really the same thing. Okay, this unpredictability is, as I said in that example, right? You ask someone something and you're not sure what they will say, right? Do you have a pet? I don't know. Yes I do, or no I don't, or I used to have a pet, or oh no, I have hundreds of pets. Oh, I own a pet store, right? There's all sorts of different responses that somebody might say. So we need to be prepared for that unpredictability, and we need to train students to say, listen, when you ask a question, you need to listen carefully because they may not give you the answer that you expect. Usually they will. Usually when you say, how are you? Someone will say, I am fine, right? Usually when you say, how old are you? They will say, I'm 22 or something. They're not going to say, why are you asking, right? But generally we can expect most of the responses, but not all of them. And the last one is heterogeneity. This means that there's many different ways to ask the same thing, or to say the same thing, or to answer the same thing, right? There's lots of different ways we can do something. And this again is very confusing to second language speakers of English. I can say if I want to go for lunch, right? I can say, oh, I'm feeling a bit hungry. What about it? What do you think? I didn't mention lunch, right? Oh, okay. How about we go for lunch? I was thinking we should go for lunch. See all the different grammatical tenses, What do you think about maybe if we went and had a bit to eat right now? Different grammatical tenses each time. So in fact, I have a repertoire. I have a number of ways in which I can express the same idea in English. And I have to do two things. First of all, I have to be prepared to communicate very precisely and very, to say what I want, using the vocabulary and the structures that I have. At the same time, I also need to be prepared to listen very, very carefully to what they're saying, because I realize they might not always say exactly what I'm looking for. And then, of course, I go back up to negotiation and I say, oh, do you mean you're hungry and you want lunch now? Or are you thinking about a snack? Or did you just want to grab a coffee or something? I'm doing that. So you can see in the whole communicative approach, it's really quite different from the earlier approaches we were looking at, because mostly of its unpredictability and its heterogeneity, the ability to use different ways of expressing the same thing. I'll tell you a story about my wife and myself, okay? We lived in Beijing for a few years. And my wife studied Chinese, very formal Chinese. She had a good teacher, older person, do this, old style listening. And I didn't really study Chinese very much, but I learned what I could here and there. And I'm a very sort of loud person, outgoing. So I go to the marketplace. I go to the market and I say, 对不起，你有没有一个什么名字的这个？这个裤子，哦，你有没有的黑色裤子？ Right, okay, grammatically incorrect, right? Fluency, 100%, right? But the most important thing is I'm being communicative. I'm getting what I want. My wife goes to the market, right? She goes, 你好。你有没有一个裤子？ you know, and she'll say it. And she'll say it perfectly, but I'll be like, oh, come on, say it, say it, say it, you know. She doesn't have the fluency, and she's not really communicating in a very, very quick way. In fact, she would be afraid of speaking unless she really knew what she was going to say, whereas I know I'm going to bumble through and make mistakes, but I'm going to communicate. So this is sort of a subtle difference. The older methods is looking at my wife. You're trying to do it exactly, precisely, only say the right thing, and if you don't know exactly how to say it, be quiet, right? You know, don't say anything. You know, the new way is saying language is really for communicating, and even if you make mistakes, it doesn't matter. We're going to sort of understand what you want to say, okay? All right. Let's see, we can go to the next one. Okay, so Starship English, the series that I wrote, again, I'm going to use some examples from here. Don't think this is a huge sales job, but of course, you know, if you don't buy the book, my children will starve. So just keep that in mind, okay? All right, okay. But let me, you know, just again, keep an open mind and think to yourself, what are you using now if you're using other textbooks? And even if you are only going to use those textbooks, think about the principles involved and think how you could adapt what you're using, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about what makes up the Starship English program. There's all these books. And yes, I did write them. One of the ladies came up, she wanted me to sign her book. She said, oh, are you, looked on the front there, are you Dr. Ken Beatty? I said, yeah. She said, oh, I didn't know. Okay, now could you sign my book, right? She wasn't sure. She didn't want an amateur to sign her book, yeah. Okay, so it's 7 levels. It starts from the starter, goes up about 6 levels up to, say, grade 6 or something, depending on how advanced your students. Korean students, very advanced in English. They eat English textbooks, right? There's so many. They go through them very quickly because they study so much in school and after school, right? It's got lots of extras. There's flashcards, kind of fun. There's an interactive whiteboard. I'll show you that later. It's very, very cute, very fun. There's a teacher's book, which is the most useful thing for you because it tells you step by step how to teach a lesson, has lots of ideas about using the communicative approach in the classroom. Tons of extra activities and things. We'll look at that later too. There's an activity book, and there's even little puppets, right? Okay, I'm not sure, I don't think they're selling the puppets in Korea, but you ask them, they'll do it. They'll change their mind. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll just look at one unit, and then we'll see how the unit is structured and how it works. Okay, so it starts off, and this is from book 1. I'm not sure you've got book 1, I don't think you do. But it just starts off, and really we're always doing 3 things at the primary level. We talked about how language becomes more complex as we're trying to negotiate meaning. But at the lower level, really we want to do 3 things. Students need to be able to ask a question, answer a question, and make a statement. That's what students always have to be able to do. Ask a question, answer a question, and make a statement. She's making some statements. My pet's a mouse. He's pretty. And agreement, yes, he is. Okay. Is your cat sad? Asking a question. No, she isn't. Right? No, she isn't. Unpredictable reply. So we're going into this area where we're not really sure what the person is going to say. Might say, yes, she's very happy, or no, she isn't. And there is an example of the positive reply. So is she happy? Yes, she is. She's happy. Are your pets sad? What are we doing here? What's different here?
Plural.
Plural, right. So we're moving from the singular into the plural. And no, they aren't. Are they happy? Yes, they are. They're happy. My wife looked at this. She said, oh, this is so simple. I could write this stuff, right? I said, no, it's not simple. It takes me weeks to write this. Why? Because it's complicated to simplify the language enough so that you're covering, what am I doing here? We've got he and she, male and female. Is your cat sad? Yes, she is. No, he isn't. The mouse is a male. So you've got he and she, you've got singular and plural, you've got positive and negative, agreement and disagreement, all just in one page. There's actually rich language potential just in an opening page. But the whole purpose of this is to give students structures, and that's what they need. They need structures to be able to describe their world, to ask questions, to make statements, and to answer questions. It goes from here into a picture dictionary section, and what are we doing here? Here we're really offering opportunities to substitute language. So instead of saying, is your cat sad, you can say, is your dog sad, is your fish sad? I don't know. How do you know if a fish is sad? Is a bird sad? Is your mouse sad? A turtle? It's got all of those basic ones, and then it's got a number of emotions, emotions or states of being. So these ones are things like big and small, pretty, thin, old, young, ugly, and things like that. Why do we use cats? Why do we use cats? Well, in fact, we don't want somebody going in and putting people in here, which they do in many textbooks, actually. I have to say I'm guilty. I did it once myself. But, then all of a sudden the child comes out and say, it's your mummy. Your mummy is fat and ugly, right? Inappropriate. And fortunately, in the student book, or in the teacher's book, we have specific culture notes that talk about this. Because in some cultures, I don't know, is this the same in Korea? In some cultures, it's okay to say you're fat, right? No? Oh, Chinese culture, it's amazing. My students, when I was in Hong Kong, say, oh, Dr. Petey, you're very fat. Why would you say that? Right? You say, oh, it's a compliment. You like eating. I said, no, it's not a compliment, right? But this is a key idea. When we learn a language, we're learning culture. There's no separation. A language is culture. We say this, language is culture. So let's try to keep that in mind. Okay, Picture Dictionary goes through, and then we need real opportunities to learn the language. So again, here we're getting into this unpredictable nature of things. We give opportunities for the students, and they have to do this right away. Not just drill, practice, but actually give them an opportunity to experiment with language, to make mistakes, to do things right, and to see how they would use the language right away. So you're giving a message to the student saying, the language belongs to you. You figure out how to use it. We go into alternative ways to learn, and we've got songs, and we'll hear a song later, so I won't play this one now. But it goes, it's got lots of music to it, and it goes, my pet's a cat, is your cat pretty? It goes through this. It's a couple of voices in there, and then the students can sing along. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I just really want to emphasize this again. When you get students involved in games or songs or any activities like this, like in the total physical response approach, if you're doing this, then all of a sudden, again, the students have to be fluent. In fact, reading and writing, who cares? It's so easy. If I'm reading something, I'm going, I go back up to the top of the page. I don't understand a word, I look at the word, Google it, right? Or something like that. It's not a problem. It's not in real time. Writing, I can take, if I'm writing a letter, I can take a week to write a letter. Who cares? It makes no difference, right? But speaking and listening are in real time, right? I can't go like, replay, go back, You can't always do that. With someone in a language situation, a real language situation, you can say, you know what? Sorry, I don't really understand what you're saying, or could you say that more slowly? You can try those things, but only to a certain amount. So what we need to do with students is increase fluency. If you have a song that's going along and they've got to keep up, they'll increase their fluency. Of course, you're not saying to them, say, okay, class, today we're going to try to increase your fluency by making you say songs quickly, right? You're not saying that. But that's what you're doing, really. So you have what the students think is going on, and you have what you know is going on. Okay, then we go into listening tasks, and there's lots of matching things and checking things. So they listen, they're saying sentences, and they have to identify what's there. And then opportunities to say things. But a really important of this part of this particular series is something that you can probably figure out. So what's going on here? You're not hearing it, but what's going on, do you think? Showing him a picture. Somebody's showing a picture, right? And then what's he saying there?
My cat is small.
Yeah, my cat is small, right? My cat is small. Now, the important thing here is that something that, I don't know, most language books don't deal with is body language. But body language is so important for expressing ideas. And if you teach students just to talk like this all the time, sit up straight, in their seats, then, and they're not really using their hands to talk with, then it becomes a big problem because they're not really communicating and they don't seem friendly to native speakers of English, and they don't seem enthusiastic or interested if they're not using their hands and their whole body to sort of express ideas, right? I love young children. Young children are so honest with their bodies. You know, they laugh and their whole body always reacting, and that's what we love about young children, is they are so honest with their emotions and their language together. And we need to be a little bit more like that and encourage that in English so that they're really understood. Okay, we go into a lot of integration of the 4 skills. So crossing the skills over has a very practical purpose. When you learn to read, when you learn something just by reading it, you know, it's one part of your brain. If you learn say it, speaking is another one, writing is another one, you know, listening, that's something else. But when you start crossing over and tying all of those together, that's really how you learn. That's the best way to learn. So you have to find opportunities to integrate the skills, to read something and say it, to listen to something and write it, and those sorts of opportunities. And again, open-ended activities for the student to figure out, how can I use this language myself? All right. And then finally, we end up at the end of every unit with some sort of meaningful play. There has to be some sort of a game. So in every unit, on the 6th page of the first 3 levels, there's some sort of a game that they can play. And that's just fun. Because again, probably the most important thing you can do as a teacher is not to try to teach them everything they need to know, right? Does anybody do that? Anybody say to their students, say, okay, after 25 years with me, you will speak English perfectly, right? Do you do that? Do you have your students forever? No. You have them for a very, very short time. You have them for a little bit of time each week. If they really want to learn a language, they're going to have to do it with help outside of school. And the only way they're going to do it on their own is if they love language, right? Now, I know I'm talking to wonderful, wonderful people who, you're probably all top students in your classes, right? Because you're all English teachers now, right? But not everybody's like that. You love English, probably all of you, and that's why you got involved in this. You probably went home and said, oh, Mommy, I'm going to read a book in English, right? And you were interested in it. And that's what we need to do, is create that love of language. We want students not to think, sit up, learn English, learn English now, pay attention all the time. And it just discourages students. We want them to have fun and enjoy themselves. Okay, all right. So there's a supportive activity book that comes with this, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then, again, the most important thing for you is the teacher's book. It's very well organized, well laid out. So you've got just one book to hold up. I know this because I am a teacher. I'm not just an author, I'm a teacher too, so I've been there. So I hate the situation where you're holding the student book in one hand, you're holding the teacher book in the other hand, you're trying to talk, right? So this one, we put the reduced master of the page that you're working on, and it tells you the theme, the aim, or the goals of it, the structures, everything that needs to be done, the key vocabulary. So all the grammatical stuff is there. Now, we don't teach children grammar, or we shouldn't try to. Or rather, we teach them grammar, but we don't teach grammatical terms, right? So a couple of years ago, I remember phoning home. I have two sons, aged 9 and 12, right? When the younger one was around 4 or 5 or something, I remember phoning home. I was on one of these trips. And I said, Spencer, how are you? And he says, good, good. I swimmed today with Mummy, right? I swimmed today with Mummy. And I said, oh, Spencer, no, swim has an irregular past tense verb, right? Did I say that? Would you say that to a child? No, I wouldn't say that to him. I say, oh, you swam with Mummy. I provided a good model, right? In fact, it's interesting that he said that, because what he was doing is something I mentioned earlier. He was creating a rule in his head. He knew other book, Learn, Learned, right? That followed a pattern of adding an ED sound. And so he used that rule that nobody told him. I never told him when he was a baby, oh, sweet little baby, when you're creating the past tense of a verb, add ED, I never said that, right, to him. But he figured this out in his rule, and he applied that rule, inappropriately in this case, to that word. So it's quite interesting. So children learn grammar. They will create the rules in their heads on themselves. We don't need to do it. But for teachers who want it, there's all this sort of structures and grammatical notes and everything else there. Takes you through lesson preparations, tells you step by step what to do. Phonics are included. They're not in the book because, again, it's confusing for students. Why are you writing the letter this way? And then they start writing letters like in phonetical ways, and it's confusing. But it's there for the teachers to use and to integrate without the students knowing what's going on. Okay? Listening activities, and again, lots of extra activities throughout. Why? Because not every class is the same. Not every student in every class is the same. I teach a class on, say, Monday morning. You know, I'm going to have some students who are better, some who are weak. I'm going to have a class Monday morning, good class, Wednesday afternoon, terrible class, right? There's always differences. So as a teacher, you need extra activities to fill in the time, both for a stronger class as well as for a stronger student. So it's something extra to do. There's also the play and learn, lots of games, things like that, tells you how to organize it. And then the whole grammatical notes and everything else is totally explained, as well as extension activities. Now, many of these units also have culture notes that explain when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, and just background information. And if you're not from America or from from an English-speaking country, you might not actually be aware of some of these things yourself. I mean, for me, when I come to Korea, I learn new things all the time. You should do this, don't do this, it's interesting. Okay, so we have a little task here, and we have a little bit of time. Okay, so if we're trying to create a communicative task, here's a little bit of a dialogue, and this is printed on your page as well. It says, where did you go last weekend? We went to my uncle's house. It's near a beautiful lake. Was it fun? Yes, it was. I helped my aunt make bread. It was yummy. Okay, what did your sister do when you were making bread? She helped my uncle milk the cows. What did you do at night? We looked at the moon and some planets through my uncle's telescope. Okay, this is at a higher level. I think this is level 4, the book's much higher level, after the students have gone through, earlier levels. But you can sort of see it's a bit complicated language, especially this one. What did your sister do when you were making bread? So it's, past progressive and simple past together in one sentence. So, okay, so I'll give you, you're sitting in tables, sort of 3. Just talk to the other person, just 2 minutes, and just think, what would you do for an activity? What's an activity that's communicative that you could do with your students? Okay? Now, not a communicative activity, you say, read this, repeat 100 times, right? Okay, so we're looking for something that's communicative, a little bit more relaxed, okay? 2 minutes, go ahead. I'll get a drink. Talk, 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 yeah. All right, let's... You know the best thing? What I just heard? You know what I just heard? The most important thing? Laughter, right? Learning language should be fun. It should be exciting. And I found lots of people laughing. Fantastic, because they're getting ideas, and they're sharing ideas, and saying some maybe silly things or whatever. But it's good. It's good. That's what language should be. Fun, enjoyable. We want it to be enjoyable for yourselves and for your students. Okay, so anybody have a big idea? What would you do to help teach this in a communicative way? Oh, yeah?
So, I thought erase the keywords. For example, what did you do last something? And then we went to my house. It's near a
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So very simple, easy thing to do. You take this and you just take out some of the words, right? And then you make them change it. You make them change it into something else. Now, there's different ways you can do this same activity. If you were doing it so that's a substitution method. But how could you make it more interesting and more exciting? Get the students around in a circle. Say, okay, where did you go? Where did you go in this last weekend? You take that part out. But you sit them in a circle, maybe 10 students, maybe more. If you've got a small group, 4 students, fantastic. And say each one must say something different, right? So where did you go yesterday, right? Where did you go last month? Where did you go last year? Where did you go Tuesday? And that way, every student needs to say something different. If one of the students says, where did you go yesterday? Oh, we already said that. You're out, right? So you turn it into a game, into a fun thing. The purpose of this, all of a sudden, students are listening to each other. Because quite often in a classroom, you know, they're just nervous. Oh, the teacher's going to ask me a question. The teacher's going to, I know the answer. You know, they say it, and then they think, oh, she won't ask me again. Yeah. I can relax, right? Students often think that way. So this way you keep them on their toes. Everybody has to listen very carefully to what each one says. And if one student makes a mistake, it says, where did you go last tomorrow? It's great. You can fix it. You can say, oh, students, when does tomorrow happen? Oh, that's not, you know, that's wrong because that's in the future, isn't it? How would we say that? Maybe that's different. Good opportunity for language lesson. Every mistake is not like, you know, that's evil. You made a mistake, you know. You're worthless. Kill yourself. Jump out the window, you know. It's not like that, right? What do we want? Every mistake is an opportunity for learning, so we can do that. Okay, just another minute, quick. Do we have one more idea? One more idea? Anybody has a great idea what we could do with this? Okay.
Students can bring their own things and that they can sell or they can show, so they show the real act.
Show the real things. Oh, again, fantastic. I love this idea. I love this idea for a couple of reasons. First of all, you know, it's getting students thinking ahead and thinking about it. And really, they're thinking about the English all of the time. You say you have to go home and bring something to talk about. Really? Okay. They go home, and then they're looking in their room. They're thinking, should I talk about this, or talk about this, or talk about this? What do I know? So they're thinking a lot about English to make that decision. When they do bring it to class, and they're prepared to talk about it, yeah. Last week, I bought a puppet, right? Or I bought a book, or I bought a pencil or something. Then they know that vocabulary, but they've thought about more. More importantly, but the more important thing is, they're using real language which relates to their life, right? Yeah, no student is going to come in and say, last weekend I bought an apartment, right? You know, what? You know, it's inappropriate for their age level. So, but in this way, in Korea maybe, yeah. But it's inappropriate for their age level generally. So what you are doing instead is they're bringing in their toys. They're bringing in things that mean something to them. They're bringing in a picture from their last vacation talking about where they went or what they were doing. They're bringing in some videotape that, you know, mommy took of when they were doing something, right, in the class. So all of this is really, really good because it personalizes it for the activities of the student. When I travel, here's a little secret for you. This is a secret language learning technique. When I travel, I need to know certain things. I didn't learn them on this trip, but when I go to some places like China, I need to know certain things. I need to be able to say, I don't need to say I am a dentist, right? I'm not a dentist. I don't need the word dentist unless my tooth hurts, right? But really what I need to say is I'm a writer, I'm a teacher, I live in Canada, 我就是in England在加拿大. You know, I need to be able to say all of those things in Chinese. So that's the language I focus on. And I learned that because I know that's what we need our students to do. Focus on the language that they will use. Okay, I'm sure that all of you have lots of other great ideas, and it's wonderful that you were able to share that a little bit in your groups. What I think we can do right now is take a quick break. You can run out, you know, crowd the washroom if you like, you know, whatever. Get something else to drink. Stretch. Do stretch just a little bit, and we'll have another little talk. So I'll give you 5 minutes. We'll come back. We'll have another talk. Okay? All right. Great.